Hey guys, Actual Dracula here with my top 10 comics from 2021. These are the comics, whether they be an ongoing title or miniseries, that I read this past year that left the biggest impression on me, the books I enjoyed the most. Now, I did not get to read as many comics as I would have liked this past year. Having a YouTube channel dedicated to comic books is kind of a double-edged sword in that the amount of time I spend on this channel and maybe hopping on other people's channels, that takes away from what little time I have for actually reading comic books. But, you know, I wouldn't change that for anything. So if you watch this and think I have made some glaring oversights by not including a certain title, which may very well have been a masterpiece, well, there's a very good chance that I simply haven't read it yet. But of the comics I did read, this is what I liked best. In addition to my top 10 picks, I've got 2 honorable mentions, as well as my biggest surprise, biggest disappointment, and most underrated book of the year. My pick for most underrated book of 2021 is Batman Reptilian. So I'm calling this underrated because with all of the Instagram posts and YouTube videos that I watch every day, I can't recall this coming up in discussion much, if at all, and I think this should have had a lot more eyeballs on it because it was fantastic. This is a 6-issue miniseries from DC's Black Label, written by Garth Ennis with art by Liam Sharp. And this really stood out among all the other Batman titles released in 2021. This is dark, both visually and narratively. Garth Ennis has given us a brutal, take-no-prisoners Batman, but not without a twisted sense of humor. And we get a lot of the very entertaining dialogue that we've come to expect from this writer. I absolutely love the artwork. The painted interiors by Liam Sharp are dark, moody, grotesque, and exaggerated, reminiscent of artists like Bill Sienkiewicz and Sam Keith. So I have no doubt that there are people out there, other YouTube channels, who read and reviewed and liked or didn't like this book. Personally, from all the stuff that I usually watch, I haven't heard much talk about it. Now, this may not be everybody's cup of tea. The artwork is incredibly stylized. Not everyone is a Garth Ennis fan, so I get it. But personally, I love this book, and it gets my pick for most underrated title of 2021. The biggest surprise for me this year was Superman, Son of Kal-El, written by Tom Taylor with art by John Timms. Now, this was a surprise because it had been a long time since I had read a Superman comic, and I thought, what the hell, it's the son of Superman, I'll give this one a shot, and I'm glad I did. This is about John Kent, the son of Superman and Lois Lane, who now faces the enormous task of filling his father's shoes as Superman is about to leave Earth, possibly for the last time, as John has been to the future and confirmed as much. So far, Taylor has not given us a huge Justice League level threat Superman book. This is Superman doing what has always been at the core of this character, and that's the people of planet Earth. Now, that being said, there are still some very real, very powerful threats that will test his abilities as the new Superman. And in John, we have a Superman whose parents have taught him well. He's compassionate and seeks to make real change in the world by helping those who have been oppressed or marginalized. Whereas a Superman who may have bigger fish to fry, fighting off enemies that threaten the entire galaxy, this is a Superman that lives and is in tune with the real current world and its problems, and therefore, given his role as a protector of the people, he cannot ignore the social and political issues that affect the very people he's trying to protect. This series ended 2021 on a strong note with issue 5 and an annual which has John meeting Lex Luthor, and was my favorite issue so far. This is definitely a title that I will continue to read in 2022. My biggest disappointment this year was The Joker, of course, from DC Comics, written by James Tynion IV with art by Guillaume March. I had been reading Tynion's run on Batman, but dropped it from my pull list towards the end of 2020, about issue 100 or so. I didn't really care for the Joker War storyline. Punchline seemed like a one-note character. Clown Hunter maybe had a bit of potential, but other than that, it just wasn't doing it for me. Tynion is a great writer and a prolific one, but to me, Batman paled in comparison to some of his other titles. So when I heard he was writing a new Joker series, I was a little hesitant, but hoping for the best, as Joker is one of my favorite characters ever. Unfortunately, I was not exactly blown away by it. The first several issues are more about Jim Gordon than they are the Joker. And okay, fine, he's a great character, but the book is called Joker, not Commissioner Gordon. Also, each issue contained a punchline backup story, which did not really add to the reading experience. It wasn't exactly my cup of tea. And as the series went on, I just continued to lose interest. Now, this book is not without its merits. I would not say it's necessarily a bad comic, just disappointing. I think the Joker deserves better, and I know Tynion is capable of a lot more. That being said, I did buy every issue because there were some really great covers. Now, before we get into my top 10, I have 2 honorable mentions. These are new titles. Both saw only 2 issues published by the end of the year, so it's not a whole lot to go on, but the material was strong enough that I felt they deserve a mention. They have a ton of potential, and I would not be surprised to see one or both of these end up on my 2022 top 10 list. The first honorable mention is Newburn from Image Comics, written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Jacob Phillips. This is about an ex-cop turned private detective named Easton Newburn with a very special practice as his clients are involved in organized crime. In fact, he doesn't just work for one mafia family, but for all the major rival families in New York. It's a strong premise that got me to pick up the book in the first place, along with the fact that Zdarsky is one of the best writers working in comics today. The first 2 issues did not disappoint, with a fascinating main character in Easton Newburn, and excellent story and dialogue from Zdarsky as expected. I also really like Jacob Phillips' artwork. It's a style perfectly suited to a crime story like this. All in all, a great read. I have a feeling it's only going to get better, and I will definitely be continuing to pick this up in 2022. My second honorable mention is also from Image Comics, and it is What's the Furthest Place from Here, from the creative team behind 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank, writer Matthew Rosenberg and artist Tyler Boss. This book takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where civilization now consists of gangs of children and teenagers. Now, that may not sound like the most groundbreaking scenario, but once I read the first issue, I was sold. This is a clever, unique coming-of-age story about a group of survivors who, given the situation, are more like a family, and what happens when they must go out into their hostile surroundings in search of one of their own. These first 2 issues impressed me in a big way with engaging dialogue, which felt natural and already has me invested in these characters, as well as the excellent artwork by Boss. Now, music and the importance music has in our lives, especially in those formative years, plays a significant role in this book, one that hasn't fully been revealed yet, but there are deluxe editions of every issue being released with a 7-inch vinyl EP featuring some of the creators' favorite punk and indie bands acting as a soundtrack for the book, as it was music that was listened to while they were making this comic. I'm thoroughly enjoying What's the Furthest Place from Here so far, and I can't wait to see where this goes in 2022. Alright, so here it is, my top 10 comics of 2021, and coming in at number 10 is one of the biggest breakout hits of the year, Stray Dogs from Image Comics. Tony Fleeks and Trish Forstner created one of the most surprising and original comics of the year, which Brian Michael Bendis accurately described as The Secret Life of Pets meets Seven. The very Disney-esque cartoon style of the artwork is absolutely perfect for a story about animals who can communicate with one another, and belies the disturbing reason why they are all together in the first place. This 5-issue series is a short but rewarding read, and undoubtedly has some of the most popular variant covers of the year, with their many horror movie poster homages. And Stray Dogs has already returned with Stray Dogs Dog Days. It's only 2 issues, but I believe another 1,000 variant covers, something like that, which you can't be mad at. There are so many great covers, so I look forward to reading that. At number 9, I have one of the strangest yet most intriguing books I read this year, and that is Bunny Mask. Written by Paul Tobin with art by Andrea Muti, Bunny Mask is a wonderfully creepy and surreal horror book from Aftershock Comics. And this is a difficult book to describe. It really needs to be experienced firsthand, and I recommend that you do. With Bunny Mask, Paul Tobin has created a mysterious character involved in an even more mysterious set of circumstances, and those mysteries continue to build as the series goes on. Some may find it frustrating, but personally, I like the ambiguity of it all. It allows for the reader to pick apart and come up with their own theories about what exactly is going on here. I'm a huge fan of Andrea Moody's artwork here, with every panel painted in his signature style and use of color washes to produce a given feeling or mood. This part of the series ended in September with issue 4 and left us scratching our heads as it brought up more questions that it answered, but fear not, this story will continue in the spring of 2022 with Bunny Mask, The Hollow Inside. Number 8 is, the only Marvel title on my list? Really? Apparently. Y'all better step up your game in 2022, Marvel. I am half joking. I'm sure there was plenty of great books put out by Marvel this year. I just didn't get a chance to read them. That being said, if they did want to step up their game up a bit, a good start would be taking some cues from this book, which is Moon Knight. Moon Knight returned once again with an excellent solo series written by Jed MacKay and art by Alessandro Cappuccio. As a fan of this character, this latest series does not disappoint. There's a lot of Moon Knight books out there. I haven't read them all. There have been many different takes on this character over the years. Certain runs have focused more on certain elements than others, such as his multiple personalities or his connection to the moon god Khonshu. And in this series, Jed MacKay has written a Mark Spector that is likable and humorous, but still struggles with the psychological issues that, for good or ill, have made Moon Knight such a unique and interesting character. There is a strong emphasis on Moon Knight as a protector of the innocent, as he has established a midnight mission to aid those in need, which marries his dual roles as both a high priest and the Fist of Khonshu, where he is a street-level crime fighter that inevitably ends up having to deal with supernatural adversaries such as vampires. Great artwork from Cappuccio, and overall a superb Moon Knight title that even those new to the character will enjoy. This has been a really great read. Number 7 on my list is Noctera from Image Comics, written by Scott Snyder with art by Tony Daniel, one of the many post-apocalyptic, post-global catastrophe set titles to come out this year, and one that I thoroughly enjoyed. Now, here's the premise, which I grabbed right off the Image website and is one of the reasons I picked up this book in the first place. 10 years after the world is plunged into an everlasting night that turns all living creatures into monstrous shades, the only way to survive is to stay close to artificial light. Enter Valentina Val Riggs, a skilled ferryman who transports people and goods along deadly unlit roads with her heavily illuminated 18-wheeler. And to me, it sounded like The Thing meets A Quiet Place meets Mad Max. And that's not too far off the mark. Snyder has clearly drawn from different elements and tropes from various horror and sci-fi movies and comics, and used them to craft a wholly original story of his own. Similar to something like The Walking Dead, the story is about the characters as opposed to the monsters that hunt them. Also, like The Walking Dead, sometimes the monsters, these shades, are the least of their worries as they have to contend with survival, first of all, and also dealing with other threats such as the mysterious Blacktop Bill. I'm a huge fan of Snyder's work on Batman, so I'm glad to see him exploring new territory and having so much success with his creator-owned series. Also, great artwork from Tony Daniel. He's no slouch either. This first 6-issue arc of this story ended in August, but it will continue in 2022, beginning with a one-shot Blacktop Bill special in January. Coming in at number 6 is Batman the Imposter, a 3-issue miniseries from DC's Black Label line. Now, I did not read the ongoing Batman or really any of the ongoing Bat titles this year, but I did read several miniseries, and this was one of my favorites. Written by Mattson Tomlin with art by Andrea Sorrentino, this story takes place roughly a year after Bruce Wayne has become Batman, and getting the city of Gotham to accept that a masked vigilante is prowling the streets has just become way more difficult, as someone else dressed as Batman has been going around murdering criminals. Tomlin has crafted one of the most interesting Batman stories in recent memory, much of which is revealed through Bruce's session with his therapist, Dr. Tompkins. We get to see a young Batman in full detective mode, whose path is mirrored by that of Gotham City Police Department Detective Blair Wong, who is also seeking the truth behind the Batman murders, as she suspects there's more to this case than would appear on the surface. The artwork by Andrea Sorrentino is outstanding. He's created a gritty, realistic Gotham, and his year one Batman costume design is excellent. It has that utilitarian look that is very similar to what Robert Pattinson is donning in the Batman movie. Sorrentino is one of my favorite artists working today, especially for his unique storytelling and page layouts. Although his experimental and dreamlike page designs are kept to a minimum in favor of more traditional panels, there's still plenty of sequences and splash pages to whet my appetite, as I do love when Sorrentino gets real crazy with it. So if you haven't, do yourself a favor and read Batman the Imposter. Number 5 is Nice House on the Lake, written by James Tynion with art by Alvaro Martinez Bueno. Part of DC's Black Label, this had me hooked from issue 1. In a year that saw a lot of new horror titles and stories with post-apocalyptic scenarios, this one stood out above the rest. And if I could use a couple of TV analogies here, this first issue is really like an ideal pilot for a show, as it introduces us to all the characters and sets things up perfectly for the story that follows, which is essentially one long bottle episode, as it all takes place in this nice house on the lake. James Tynion juggled the writing duties on a lot of titles this year, and he did not drop the ball on this one.
I'm so sorry.
Excellent dialogue and character building, all the while dropping cryptic hints about this puzzling and sinister feeling plot. The artwork by Alvaro Martinez is fantastic. It's loose, energetic, and suitably creepy. This is a great combination of horror and mystery that keeps you guessing with each issue, and it is one of my highest recommendations if you have not read it. This book is currently on a 5-month hiatus and will return in March with issue 7. At number 4 is Primordial from Image Comics. This is another excellent project from the creative team behind Gideon Falls and Joker Killer Smile, writer Jeff Lemire and artist Andrea Sorrentino. Gideon Falls is one of my favorite comic series ever, so when I saw the previews for this, I was really excited, as it looked like it would be a similar project in many ways. Primordial blends sci-fi and Cold War espionage in a 6-issue story about what happened to the first animals to be launched into space. Laika the dog, sent up by the Soviet Union, and Abel and Baker, the 2 monkeys sent by NASA. Now, what made Gideon Falls so special to me was its consistent, unified vision, its cohesive marriage of writing and art from Lemire and Sorrentino, and Primordial absolutely has all that as well. As I mentioned when talking about Batman the Imposter, Sorrentino is one of the most talented and unique artists working today, and his ambitious, psychedelic page layouts are in full force here. These two clearly have a harmonious working relationship. This feels like it should be the work of one person. Of course, Lemire could have drawn this himself. He's fully capable of that, but his style is altogether different, and Sorrentino's combination of gritty realism, exquisite line work, and captivating page layouts suit this story perfectly. Together, they're taking full advantage and pushing the boundaries of what this medium is capable of. There are only 2 issues of Primordial to go, but fans of this creative team have a lot to look forward to in 2022, as they announce they will be working together on several horror projects, part of the same universe, titled The Bone Orchard Mythos. I cannot wait for that. In the meantime, read Primordial if you haven't. Coming in at number 3 is Ha Ha, the 6-issue miniseries from Image Comics by Ice Cream Man writer W. Maxwell Prince, with each issue illustrated by a different artist. Like Ice Cream Man, Ha Ha is an anthology series, with each issue being a self-contained story. And this series does have a similar vibe or feeling to that title due to Prince's style of writing. And issue 6 sees a crossover between the two, implying that these 2 books are part of a shared universe. Now, whereas Ice Cream Man offers up disturbing horror tales that always create a sense of unease, Ha Ha is a series of sad, haunting clown stories full of desperation and melancholy. Not exactly horror, but disturbing in their own way, especially so if you don't like clowns, I would think. Of course, both titles are surreal and thoroughly original. I like the artwork in all 6 issues, particularly Vanessa Del Rey's in issue 1 and Martin Morazzo's in issue 6. These may not be the most feel-good, uplifting comics from 2021, but they are exceptional, intense, and strangely beautiful. W. Maxwell Prince is one of the most talented writers working today, and I hope we get to see more of these sad clown tales in the future. And speaking of Ice Cream Man, my number 2 pick is Ice Cream Man, the horror anthology series published by Image Comics, written by W. Maxwell Prince with art by Martin Morazzo. Honestly, I could have easily put either this or Haha in the number 2 spot. To me, they are equally excellent comics. But what gives this title the edge is the artwork by Martin Morazzo, who only illustrated 1 issue of Haha, but has drawn all 27 issues of Ice Cream Man, with excellent coloring provided by Chris O'Halloran. And what continues to impress me about this series is Prince's ability to consistently create new and horrifying situations for each issue. Each story is unique, but they are seemingly connected, as evidenced by the recurring appearance of the mysterious and sinister Rick the Ice Cream Man, who may or may not be responsible for all the misery and tragedies that befall the characters of these stories. There's typically a sense of anxiety and terror in these stories, but plenty of gallows humor as well. There are few comics today that I find myself looking forward to reading as much as Ice Cream Man. It's bizarre, shocking, and above all, entertaining. Incredible storytelling from W. Maxwell Prince, and outstanding artwork from Morazzo and O'Halloran. In my opinion, Ice Cream Man is a perfect comic, and it gets my highest recommendation. Alright, my number 1 pick, my favorite comic that I read this year, was We Live by the Miranda Brothers. This is a phenomenal comic published by Aftershock, written by Inaki and Roy Miranda, with art by Inaki Miranda. This story has everything going for it. An excellent original premise that plays out beautifully over 5 issues. It's exciting, engaging, action-packed, with scenes that are at times quite brutal, but never needless violence. It's always in service to moving the plot forward. It's emotionally moving and ultimately an incredibly fun and satisfying read. Inaki Miranda's artwork in this comic is gorgeous, beautiful, energetic line work with a style that suits all of the very different elements in the story, from very animated children with fantastic costume designs to incredible imaginary beasts to gruesome, organic, zombie-like creatures. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the coloring by Eva de la Cruz, which is so good. It's one of the first things that stood out to me. The coloring is bold and imbues every panel with an energy it might not have otherwise. You can see a great attention to detail was put into coloring this book. It's truly excellent. Now, I don't really want to give away anything about this story. By all means, go look up the synopsis, but I think this is best experienced by diving in head first without any real prior knowledge. You will not be disappointed. So I won't say much about We Live other than I would consider it a sci-fi and fantasy masterpiece. Though categorization does it a disservice, as I believe this is a book that will be enjoyed by readers of all genres. Every title on this top 10 list had something special about it, and they all had the potential to make my number 1 spot on this list. And since the very act of reading comics is entirely subjective and a personal experience, it's difficult to designate some kind of rank or status to these works of art. And ultimately, putting We Live in the top spot was not based on any set of particular criteria. Ultimately, I like everything about this book, and it just felt like the right choice. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I think you will too. So if you haven't, do yourself a favor and read We Live, as this story continues in March with We Live, Age of the Palladians. So there you have it, guys, my favorite books that I read this past year. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree, disagree? Are there any titles not on this list that deserve to be? You know, there are plenty of titles from 2021 that I have not read yet, but come highly recommended from others. I can name off the top of my head things like Nightwing, Swamp Thing, Death of Layla Starr, Sweet Paprika. The list goes on and on. Just stuff I heard great things about, but just didn't get around to reading yet. I obviously highly recommend you read all the books on this list if you haven't. They may not be for everyone, but I think they're all worth a shot. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and Happy New Year.